He hadn't held a woman in 12 years, and now the first to collapse into his arms was already half broken by the world. Arlen Crow no longer expected much from life. He lived quiet and alone in the dry Arizona hills, keeping company only with the wind and a stack of memories he never spoke aloud. All he owned was a small cabin, a well-used shotgun, and regrets older than the pines that ringed his land. Then, on one unforgiving afternoon, everything shifted. She staggered out from the tree line, as if death itself were close behind her, barefoot caked in dust, barely covered by a strip of white cloth that might once have been a curtain or maybe a dress. Her arms were scraped raw, lips split and dry, and her eyes looked like they had witnessed things no soul should carry. She crumpled at his feet. No scream, no name. Just two broken words whispered as she clutched the filthy cloth to her chest. "Please, don't." Arlen froze. There was little blood to see, but her body shook as if she'd crawled straight out of a burning house. He stepped closer. She flinched, yet didn't pull away. The cloth slipped just enough, and what he saw turned his stomach. Her back looked as though someone had tried to carve ownership into her skin burns, welts, deep, twisted scars, patterns that never should have marked a human body. Marks, like symbols, leather and fire, as if someone had tried to sign their name in her pain. Arlen staggered back. It wasn't the blood or the wounds that broke him. It was how she folded into herself, like someone who had learned how to disappear. For a heartbeat, he wasn't in Arizona anymore. He was back in Tennessee, back in the war, seeing the girl he couldn't save, staring at him with that same hollow look. He had walked away once. He had sworn he never would again. Slowly, steadily, he removed his coat and wrapped it around her like a vow, no questions, no words, only action. Then he lifted her and carried her away from whatever hell she had escaped. For the first time in years, he felt something stir inside his chest. Alive. He thought the worst was over. He didn't know the real storm hadn't even begun. The cabin was warm, but the night air in those hills still carried a bite. It wasn't cold enough to kill, but after what she'd endured, even a summer breeze must have felt like ice. He laid her gently on the old cot against the back wall. She said nothing. Didn't even try to cover herself more than she already was. She just curled inward, clutching the coat as if it were sewn from safety itself. Arlen didn't ask a single question. He didn't want to scare her, and truth be told, he wouldn't have known where to begin. So he did what men like him did when words failed. He built a small fire in the stove, not for warmth, but because the crackle gave the cabin a heartbeat. She barely moved. Her eyes tracked the room, as if she expected someone to kick the door in at any moment. Every sound outside made her tense. Even the wind, brushing the shutters, seemed to rattle her bones. Arlen made coffee. Bitter. Strong. Older than he cared to admit. It gave his hands something to do. He sat at the table watching the fire, stealing quiet glances toward her now and then. She was still breathing. Still silent. But the way she gripped that coat told him she hadn't let go of life entirely. Later that night, she stirred. Just slightly. Her head turned and her eyes met his for a single heartbeat. No words, no expression, just a fragile thread of connection, something human buried beneath all that pain. He nodded the way men who had known trenches knew when silence mattered. She turned her face back toward the wall. By morning, she whispered her first word. Water. He handed her a cup, slow and careful. No sudden movements. She drank without a sound, then looked at him longer than before. That look didn't ask for help. It didn't offer thanks. It said only one thing: I'm still here. What Arlen Crow didn't yet understand was that single word that one careful sip would set into motion a chain of events no fire, no shotgun, and no amount of silence could ever stop. She barely spoke the next day. Just brief replies, small nods. A few guarded looks, as if she were still deciding whether Arlen Crow was real or just another cruel trick the world liked to play. Later that afternoon, while Arlen sat on the porch shaving down a cracked chair leg, she stepped outside and settled on the steps beside him. For a long moment, she said nothing, only stared into the trees. Then, almost like she was speaking to the air, she murmured, "They made me clean their boots." Arlen kept carving. He didn't flinch, just gave a slow nod. Mira Calder went on saying there was a mining camp nearby, unofficial, off the books, nowhere on any map. A place where people were worked until they broke, then punished for breaking. She'd tried to run twice. The first time they broke her nose. The second time they carved her back like rawhide. He didn't ask how she escaped the third time. Some stories were meant for stronger days. But as the sun dipped behind the pines, a sound cut through the quiet and stopped him cold. Hoofbeats fast, coming hard up the ridge road. Arlen rose, grabbed his shotgun, and motioned Mira inside. She froze for half a second, then moved like someone who'd practiced fear. The man who rode up wasn't a cowboy. He looked more like a drunk banker who'd lost his watch and blamed the waitress' fancy vest, greasy mustache, eyes that couldn't hide the cruelty behind them. It was Lester Quinn. He called out her name. "Mira Calder. You've got one chance to come back quiet." Arlen stepped off the porch. "She's not going anywhere." Quinn smirked. "That ain't your call." Arlen worked the shotgun, not aiming just enough to remind him this wasn't a city street. This was Crow's land. Quinn didn't draw. He spat into the dirt, turned his horse, and rode off. The look he threw back over his shoulders said enough. He'd return, and he wouldn't come alone. Arlen said nothing for a long while after. He sat with the shotgun across his knees, eyes fixed on the trees. Later that night, he wrote a short note to an old friend who carried a badge just in case. The kind of note a man sends when trouble has already chosen him. 3 days passed. Quiet days, but not peaceful ones. The kind of stillness where even the wind feels like it's waiting. Arlen stayed close. He didn't say it, but Mira knew he was watching. He didn't cut wood or check traps, just cleaned that shotgun like it was Sunday morning and the world was about to end. Then it came. Late afternoon, the air went dead. No birds, no insects. Just hooves and dust climbing the ridge road. 3 riders, no ranch brands, no law, moving like they didn't need permission. Arlen stood in the doorway, Mira behind him, holding her breath. One of the riders was Quinn. This time he hadn't come to talk. "Step aside, old man," Quinn shouted. Arlen didn't move. The second rider shifted in his saddle hand, drifting too close to his belt. Arlen didn't wait. He fired. The man screamed and folded like a sack of grain, blood pouring from his leg. The other 2 froze, not running, not reaching either. Then another voice, cut in calm, steady, worn like leather. "I'd think real hard about your next move." From the tree line stepped a man with a badge on his chest and a rifle slung low. Vaughn Mercer. Vaughn Mercer. Arlen's old war partner, now sheriff over the whole hard stretch of territory, met each rider's eyes without blinking. "This land falls under my authority," he said evenly. "And she's under my protection," the wounded man groaned. One of his companions muttered a curse. None of them reached for a gun. They backed their horses away and rode out. Slowly, but they rode. Later, when the ridge had gone quiet again, Arlen Crow asked how Vaughn had known to come. Vaughn gave a thin smile. A note that reeks of gunpowder and regret usually means trouble's already on the move. If anyone thought that would be the last time their paths crossed, they were wrong. Some stories don't end with shots fired. Sometimes that's only where they begin. The dust settled. The cabin grew quiet again, but not the old kind of quiet. Not heavy, not haunted. It was the kind that let a man hear his own breathing and not resent it. Mira Calder no longer hid. She still startled at sharp sounds, still woke some nights slick with sweat. But mornings found her at the table now, drinking her coffee slow. She helped gather firewood, asked questions about the stove. Small things. And small things matter when you've come back from the edge. Arlen saw it too, the way she lingered longer at the window each dawn. The way a laugh escaped her, once no louder than a breath, but real. He didn't know what to do with it. He wasn't sure if he was mending her or if she was mending him. Maybe it didn't matter. One evening, she set a basket of wildflowers by the window. He said nothing. The next morning, for the first time in years, he swept the porch clean. They never spoke of love, never named anything. But one night over stew and black coffee, she looked up and asked, "You ever think some people aren't meant to save others just to give them room to save themselves?" Arlen didn't answer. He only nodded. Because if he'd spoken, the wrong words might have come out. And that was how it went. 2 people, 1 cabin. A slow kind of healing that didn't ask permission or need explaining. Out there are others like Mira still running. Others like Arlen sitting alone, convinced their story's already over. Sometimes it takes only one choice, one moment of mercy, one decision not to turn away. And in the Old West, stories don't always end clean. Sometimes they just keep riding on. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso legal/disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice imagery and structure, but every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.